Ethan shouted, "How could you do this, Mark?" The words crashed in the middle of the night, louder than the storm outside. His voice shook with fury, but beneath it was the raw edge of heartbreak. Mark clenched his fists, his face pale yet defiant, and he said, "She was never yours to keep, Ethan." Thunder roared overhead, as if the sky itself split in rage. Sophia stood frozen, her trembling lips unable to form words, guilt flickering in her eyes like lightning. Liam whispered, "This isn't what friendship was meant to be." The air was thick with betrayal, and every second felt like a knife cutting deeper. Ethan's chest heaved as rain lashed against the windows, and he realized nothing would ever be the same again. The friendship that once held him steady was shattering, leaving only shards sharp enough to bleed. The storm had not begun outside, but inside their hearts. Ethan remembered the way he and Mark once laughed on this very couch, their voices filling the room with joy. Now, silence pressed between them like a wall. Sophia said, "Please, stop this," her voice breaking, though guilt weighted each word. Ethan's chest tightened with memories of promises spoken late at night, when trust felt eternal. He stared at Mark, his oldest friend, and wondered how envy had festered so quietly. Mark avoided Ethan's gaze, his eyes shadowed with secrets. Liam sat in the corner, his silence speaking more than words. The friendship once stronger than family, now teetered on the edge of destruction. Every breath felt heavy, as if the storm outside mirrored the chaos inside their souls. Ethan whispered, "We swore we'd never hurt each other." His words carried the weight of years, pressed thin by betrayal. Mark's lips parted, but no apology came, only silence. Sophia glanced between them, her eyes shimmering with regret. Ethan's mind flashed back to the time Mark stood beside him when no one else would, moments of laughter in empty streets. Those memories now cut like glass, sharp and jagged. Liam shifted uncomfortably, sensing the collapse no one could stop. The storm roared louder, as if mocking their pain. Ethan said, "You took more than her, Mark. You stole the years I trusted you with." Mark's fists loosened, but his eyes remained cold, unrepentant. The bond was unraveling, thread by thread, before all their eyes. Sophia cried, "I never meant for this to happen." Her voice cracked, echoing over thunder. Ethan's heart pounded, but his anger was no longer sharp, it was hollow, like a drumbeat of loss. Mark muttered, "You were too blind to see us." Ethan stared at him, disbelief crashing like waves. Liam stepped forward, voice low, "Truth doesn't excuse betrayal." The storm banged against the windows as if trying to break through. Ethan's chest burned with the weight of everything unsaid, the history shredded in seconds. Sophia's tears carved trails down her cheeks, her guilt undeniable. Mark stood still, unmoved, his silence crueler than words. Ethan whispered, "We were brothers once." That memory felt more distant than the storm outside. Ethan's voice trembled as he said, "I thought loyalty meant something to you." Mark's lips curled, but no warmth touched his eyes. Sophia whispered, "I was lost," guilt strangling her words. The storm's howl filled the silence between them, as if nature itself mourned their ruin. Liam's gaze fell to the floor, knowing he was witnessing the end of something sacred. Ethan remembered the nights they promised forever, the laughter that stitched their lives together, and realized those stitches had unraveled completely. Mark finally said, "I took what I wanted because I could." The words struck harder than thunder, shattering what little remained. Ethan stood frozen, knowing this was the moment their friendship died, buried in betrayal. The storm of betrayal was fresh in Ethan's chest, yet memory dragged him backward too when loyalty was unshakable. He could still hear Mark laughing beside him on summer afternoons when they were just boys, chasing after basketballs until the sun bled out across the sky. Back then, trust wasn't a promise, it was air they breathed together, never questioned, never doubted. Ethan said, "You always had my back, no matter what." And he remembered the day Mark stood by him after his father's funeral, quiet but unmovable, shielding him from the weight of grief. Sophia was nowhere in their lives then, and nothing threatened the fortress of their bond. Liam too had been part of that circle, the quiet witness who shared in their laughter without needing words. Now that fortress lay in ruins, but Ethan's mind clung desperately to its foundations. Mark had been his brother, his family by choice, and Sophia's gentle presence in later years had felt like a blessing they both celebrated. The irony that she would become the wedge between them sliced deeper than any knife. Ethan whispered to himself, "It used to be so simple, didn't it?" And in that moment, the ache of love for what once was eclipsed even the rage of betrayal. The memory shifted to late nights spent on Ethan's porch, when the world felt too big, but friendship made it small. Ethan remembered sitting beside Mark under a blanket of stars, their voices hushed but their secrets loud enough to echo across the night. Ethan had confessed fears of never being enough, of losing people he loved, and Mark had said, "You'll never lose me, Ethan, I swear it." That promise was carved into his heart like stone, and Ethan believed it with every beat of his chest. Sophia hadn't entered their story yet, and Liam had been the occasional shadow, drifting in and out, but always loyal in his quiet way. Ethan's throat tightened at the thought of how that promise had turned into ashes. He could still taste the cola they shared straight from the bottle, still hear Mark's laugh chasing away the darkness. What had turned that laughter into silence so sharp? Ethan closed his eyes and thought, if loyalty was once a vow under the stars, then betrayal was the sound of that vow cracking in the dark. He whispered, "You swore," and I believed, knowing that no memory could soften the pain of how wrong he had been. Sophia had entered their circle much later, her arrival gentle and almost unremarkable at first. Ethan remembered the way Mark teased him when he first spoke of her, his grin playful, his voice filled with brotherly pride. "Finally you found someone who sees you," Mark had said, clapping Ethan on the back. Sophia's smile had been kind, her laughter like music that filled spaces friendship alone could not. Ethan thought of how she joined their evenings, blending into the rhythm of their bond as though she had always belonged. Liam had noticed the subtle shifts, the way Ethan's gaze softened whenever Sophia spoke, but he never voiced it. Those days felt golden, like a new chapter in a book that had been waiting to be written. Ethan whispered, "You said you were happy for me, Mark," and the memory tightened like a rope around his chest. If happiness was once shared between them, how could envy now poison what had seemed pure? The more Ethan remembered Sophia's first steps into their world, the more the present betrayal stung, because he realized Mark's envy had been seeded in silence from the very beginning. Ethan remembered the nights when all four of them gathered together, laughter rising louder than the music on the stereo. Sophia sat on the couch beside him, her hand brushing his as if by accident, while Mark sat across the room, cracking jokes that had everyone in stitches. Liam leaned against the wall, his quiet smile proof that even silence could belong. Ethan said, "These are the nights I'll never forget," and everyone agreed, even Mark, whose grin carried no hint of envy then. Friendship and love had felt entwined, like threads weaving into something indestructible. But hindsight revealed cracks that memory had painted over. Ethan recalled the way Mark's eyes lingered too long, the way Sophia sometimes glanced away, and the way Liam's silence felt heavier than usual. Back then, none of it mattered because loyalty was still a truth they believed in. Ethan whispered now, "We were invincible together." But that invincibility had been a fragile illusion. The laughter of those nights now haunted him like a ghost, mocking the silence that betrayal left behind. The strongest memory of all was not laughter or love, but a vow made in a whisper. Ethan remembered standing with Mark on a quiet rooftop, city lights flickering below, both of them promising to stand beside each other until the end. Ethan had said, "No matter what comes, we'll never let go," and Mark had nodded with conviction. That vow had been their anchor, a binding thread stronger than blood. Sophia had come later, but Ethan believed she fit within that promise, a shared joy they could celebrate together. Liam had known of their bond, respected it, and carried it like an unspoken truth. But the vow was broken, not by time, not by distance, but by choice. Ethan now felt the rooftop promise crumbling in his memory, the echo of Mark's voice mocking him with every word that once gave comfort. He whispered to the night, "You said forever, Mark," and the betrayal burned deeper because forever had ended too soon. The anchor had been cut loose, and Ethan was left adrift, drowning in memories of loyalty that no longer existed. Ethan began noticing the small fractures before he dared to admit them. Calls went unanswered, plans were broken with weak excuses, and the warmth that once came easily between him and Mark now felt forced. At first he told himself it was nothing, that life was pulling them in different directions, but the unease grew heavy. Sophia said, "He seems distracted lately," her voice uncertain, her eyes searching for comfort that Ethan could not give. Liam sat silently, his gaze flicking between them, his silence too heavy to be casual. Ethan remembered when Mark's presence felt like a shield. Now it felt like a shadow stretching longer with each passing day. The laughter was shorter, the silences longer, and Ethan thought, "This is not the brotherhood we swore on rooftops." Mark avoided Ethan's eyes too often, and when their gazes did meet, there was something unreadable in the space between them, something sharp. Ethan whispered, "Why does it feel like I'm losing you already?" And the storm of suspicion began to cloud what once had been pure sunlight. Sophia's presence began to shift the air between them in ways Ethan could not ignore. When she laughed, Mark's eyes lingered too long, his smile just a little too wide, and Ethan felt a pang he tried to silence. Ethan said, "You've been different with her," but Mark brushed it off with a grin, replying, "You're imagining things." The denial cut deeper than truth because Ethan's heart told him what his mind refused to accept. Liam sat close by, noticing the currents no one dared speak of, his silence heavy like a warning. Sophia's hand brushed Ethan's, yet Ethan felt Mark's gaze sear across them like fire. Once they had shared everything. Now Ethan guarded what mattered most, unsure if it was already slipping from his grasp. The trust between them was no longer air but smoke, curling away with every word unspoken. Ethan whispered into the hollow night, "I know something is changing. I just don't know when it will break." The cracks widened when Mark began disappearing without explanation. Ethan's calls rang unanswered, and when they met, Mark's excuses sounded hollow. Ethan said, "Where were you last night?" But Mark only shrugged, muttering, "Busy. You wouldn't understand." The words stabbed more sharply than any insult, because understanding had once been the foundation of their friendship. Sophia noticed too, asking, "Are you two fighting?" Her tone nervous, but Ethan shook his head, though doubt weighed heavy. Liam stood in the doorway, arms crossed, saying nothing but carrying the burden of truth in his silence. The bond that once seemed eternal was thinning like frayed rope, each tug threatening to snap it apart. Ethan wondered if he was clinging to a memory instead of a brother. The air grew heavier every time Mark stepped into the room, a storm before lightning struck. Ethan whispered, "Why are you pulling away when I need you to stay?" Knowing no answer would heal the distance already carved. Jealousy revealed itself in glances Ethan could no longer ignore. Sophia entered the room with a gentle smile, and Mark's gaze clung to her like gravity, unashamed, unrelenting. Ethan felt heat rise in his chest, anger and sorrow merging into one. Ethan said, "Stop looking at her that way," but Mark's smirk twisted into something cruel. "Maybe she deserves more than you give her," he replied, his words dripping like poison. Sophia gasped, her eyes wide with shock, while Liam whispered, "Don't," his voice barely audible but urgent. The silence afterward felt like a cliff edge, fragile and deadly. Ethan's fists clenched, and he wondered how many moments like this had passed unnoticed, how many times Mark's envy had been disguised as brotherhood. The storm outside rattled the glass, mirroring the storm within Ethan's soul. Trust was crumbling faster than he could hold it, and betrayal no longer felt like a possibility, but an inevitability. During a night Ethan would never forget. He walked into the room to find Mark leaning too close to Sophia, his words low, his smile unmistakably intimate. Ethan froze, heart pounding, as Sophia pulled back, whispering, "Mark, don't." But the damage was already done because Ethan saw it. the hunger in Mark's eyes that could no longer be denied. Ethan said, "You crossed the line," his voice shaking with rage and despair. Mark turned slowly, his expression unapologetic, as if daring Ethan to react. Liam's voice cut through the tension, soft but sharp. "This is not who you're meant to be, Mark." The silence that followed carried the weight of years unraveling in seconds. "Me so cold year." Ethan's chest heaved, the betrayal now undeniable, the storm within now a hurricane. He thought, "This is not the friend I knew. This is the stranger who stole him away." Ethan had suspected, but suspicion became reality on a night when silence was impossible. He heard Sophia's trembling voice behind the half-closed door saying, "Mark, this has to stop." His heart seized, his mind racing with denial, but he pushed the door open anyway. The sight hit like lightning. Mark standing too close, eyes fixed on her with hunger that betrayed years of false brotherhood. Sophia backed away, her face pale, guilt shadowing her expression. Ethan said, "So this is the truth," his voice raw, cutting the air like glass. Mark turned, defiant, and replied, "She was never yours alone, Ethan. She wanted more than you could give." The words gutted him, every letter another blade. Liam stepped forward, whispering, "This is the betrayal no one wanted to see," his tone heavy with sorrow. Ethan's chest burned as memories rewrote themselves, every moment of loyalty now poison. The bond of brotherhood shattered, replaced with the undeniable sting of betrayal. Ethan's rage tore through him, yet pain struck harder than fury. "You were my brother, Mark," he cried, his voice cracking with grief. Mark smirked, though his eyes revealed the tremor of guilt buried beneath arrogance. Sophia whispered, "I never wanted this," her voice trembling as tears welled. Liam's gaze was heavy, a witness to the unraveling of something sacred. Ethan remembered every time Mark had sworn loyalty, every laugh that now felt like a mask hiding envy. His chest heaved as he shouted, "You didn't just take her, you destroyed everything we built." Mark replied coldly, "I only took what you didn't value enough." The words crushed Ethan, rewriting years of trust into lies. Sophia's sobs filled the silence, the storm outside echoing their collapse. Liam muttered, "Some truths scorch everything they touch," and Ethan realized their bond was ashes scattered in the night. The confrontation spiraled into raw chaos, every word another wound. Ethan said, "You lied every time you called me brother," his voice breaking under weight of betrayal. Mark fired back, "I never lied, but I wanted more than being in your shadow." Sophia clutched her chest, whispering, "Please stop, you're tearing us apart," yet her words crumbled against the storm of anger. Liam stepped forward, his tone sharp. "This is envy dressed as love, Mark." The silence that followed seared, as if even the house itself recoiled from their voices. Ethan felt every promise dissolve, every childhood memory turn to dust. The man before him was no longer his friend, but a stranger wearing a familiar face. The truth was undeniable, and Ethan thought, this is not the betrayal of a moment but of years. His fists shook, but it was his heart that fractured completely, the trust gone forever. Sophia tried to bridge the chasm, but her voice faltered. "Ethan, I never meant to hurt you," she sobbed, her face streaked with tears. Ethan's chest felt hollow, his anger replaced by despair, and he whispered, "You meant everything to me, Sophia." Mark's jaw tightened, his jealousy plain, as he sneered, "You always thought she was yours, but she saw me too." The words sliced deeper than knives, cutting through Ethan's last defenses. Liam said softly, "This is the moment you both become strangers." The storm outside rattled the walls, echoing the chaos within. Ethan's knees weakened, not from exhaustion but from the crushing weight of betrayal pressing down. He realized love had become a weapon, wielded by the friend he trusted most. The truth was no longer hidden, and there was no way back to the innocence they once shared. The twist had fully unraveled their bond, leaving nothing but wreckage. Ethan stared at Mark, his voice breaking as he said, "I see you now for who you are, not my brother, but my betrayer." Mark's silence was louder than words, his smirk gone, replaced with cold emptiness. Sophia wept into her hands, whispering Ethan's name as if that could undo the wound. Liam spoke with a heavy tone. Trust, once broken, never returns. Ethan's mind replayed every moment of loyalty, every promise, now shattered illusions mocking him. He realized that betrayal is not just an act but a revelation, a mask torn away to show the truth beneath. The man he had loved as a brother was gone, replaced by envy, greed, and cruelty. Ethan whispered, "You didn't just take her, you took every version of us we could have been," and the room fell into silence heavier than thunder. The storm reached its peak inside Ethan's chest, and the room shook with the weight of unspoken rage. He stepped forward, voice cracking with fury. "You destroyed everything, Mark. Everything we built." Mark's jaw tightened, his smirk gone, and he shouted back, "You think you were the only one suffering? You never saw me, Ethan. Never." Sophia clutched her chest, sobbing. "Please stop. You're tearing us apart." Liam's voice cut like steel through the storm. "This is no longer friendship, it's war." Ethan's chest heaved, fists trembling, his mind replaying the rooftop vow that now mocked him with its falsehood. Mark's words sliced deeper than betrayal. They carried envy so raw, it burned the air. Ethan roared, "You were my brother, and you killed that bond with your own hand." Thunder rattled the glass, lightning split the sky, and silence crashed heavier than screams. Mark's voice broke through the storm, dripping venom. "I was always second to you, Ethan, always living in your shadow. Sophia saw me, she chose to look my way, and you can't stand it." Ethan's face burned, his heart twisting with betrayal. "She never chose you. You forced yourself into what was ours," he snapped, every word a strike of lightning. Sophia cried harder, whispering, "I never wanted to be between you two," her tears like rivers down her cheeks. Liam whispered gravely, "Shadows do not excuse betrayal." Ethan stepped closer to Mark, their faces inches apart, fury boiling over like a volcano. He thought of every memory now stained, every promise shredded, and rage consumed him. "I gave you everything," Ethan roared, "and you spat on it like it meant nothing." The storm outside thundered, as if the sky itself mirrored their collapse. The clash was no longer just words, but the death of years condensed into moments. Ethan slammed his fist against the wall, shouting, "You've taken everything from me, but you won't take my soul." Mark's eyes flared, his voice sharp with hatred. "Your soul was weak, Ethan. I only revealed the truth." Sophia gasped, her trembling voice breaking. "Stop, please stop this madness." Liam's gaze was steady, his whisper like judgment. "This is not strength, Mark. This is destruction." Ethan's chest burned as rage surged, but grief carved deeper wounds. He saw the boy he once laughed with replaced by a stranger he could no longer recognize. His hands shook, his voice raw as he said, "You're not my friend, you're my betrayer, and tonight you killed us." Silence stretched thin, heavier than thunder, and for a moment the storm seemed to pause outside, listening to their collapse. Ethan's rage cracked open, spilling into despair. He said, "You were the only person I trusted when my world collapsed, and you repaid me with betrayal." Mark's voice was bitter, his tone like broken glass. "I was tired of being your shadow, Ethan. Tired of watching you have everything." Sophia wept uncontrollably, whispering, "This isn't who we were meant to be." Liam's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp. "Betrayal does not rewrite love, it only poisons it." Ethan's body shook, every nerve burning with sorrow, as he shouted, "You've poisoned everything, Mark, and I can never forgive you." The storm screamed outside, its voice drowning the silence that followed, while the air thickened with finality. Ethan's heart felt ripped from his chest, his friendship now ashes scattered across the storm. The climax came in a roar of words that could never be taken back. Ethan screamed, "You are dead to me, Mark. You are not my brother, not my friend, nothing but a stranger." Mark's face twisted with fury, but beneath it flickered the shadow of guilt, quickly buried beneath pride. Sophia whispered Ethan's name, her voice breaking, yet she could not bridge the abyss between them. Liam said firmly, "The bond is broken, and nothing can mend it now." The storm crashed louder than before, glass rattling as if the world itself mourned the death of their friendship. Ethan's chest heaved, sweat and tears mixing, while Mark stood stiff, his eyes cold. Every promise, every memory, every vow was gone. Ethan whispered, "This was the end, and you chose it," and the silence that followed was more brutal than the storm itself. The house fell silent after the storm of words, but silence was not peace. It was suffocating. Ethan stood in the middle of the room, chest heaving, his eyes locked on Mark, but seeing only a stranger. Sophia's tears dripped like raindrops onto the floor, her voice faint as she said, "I never wanted this to happen." Liam whispered, "What's broken cannot be mended with apologies," his tone steady, final. Ethan turned slowly, staring at the walls that had once echoed with laughter, now haunted by betrayal. His hands trembled, not from rage, but from the weight of a bond severed forever. He whispered, "You didn't just break my trust, you buried it." Mark remained silent, his jaws set, his pride his last shield. The storm outside began to ease, but inside Ethan, the destruction was complete. Ethan walked past Mark without another word, his footsteps heavy like stones breaking the silence. Sophia reached out, whispering, "Please, don't leave like this," but her hand fell short, and Ethan did not turn back. Liam's voice lingered in the air, calm yet piercing. Some endings are chosen by silence, not words. Mark's eyes followed Ethan, his expression unreadable, guilt flickering but quickly smothered by pride. Ethan stepped outside into the cold air, the rain soaking him instantly, but it felt cleaner than the poisoned air inside. He whispered to himself, "This storm can wash me, but it can't erase what's been done." Every step felt like carrying the weight of their past, heavier than his body could bear. He did not look back, for there was nothing left to return to. The rain cooled Ethan's skin, but not the fire in his chest. He stopped under a flickering streetlight, the city quiet except for water dripping from rooftops. He remembered nights with Mark under these same lights, their laughter bouncing against empty streets, dreams whispered like secrets to the stars. Now, those memories were ashes, taunting him. He whispered, "What is a brother worth if he becomes the blade that cuts deepest?" His reflection in the puddle beneath him looked broken, unrecognizable. Sophia's voice echoed faintly in his mind, but he shut it out, the wound too fresh. Liam's warning repeated itself, steady and haunting. Not all truths heal, some only scar. Ethan clenched his fists, swearing silently that betrayal would not define him, though it would mark him forever. The night swallowed him, but his resolve burned quietly within. Sophia stood at the window, her tears fogging the glass as she whispered Ethan's name. Inside, Mark sat slouched on the couch, his face hidden in shadows, his silence heavier than any words he could speak. Liam leaned against the wall, his voice low but sharp. "You've won nothing, Mark. You've only destroyed." Mark's eyes flickered, but he said nothing, his pride collapsing into emptiness. Sophia turned from the window, her sobs quiet but endless, realizing she had been the spark that burned the bond to ash. Liam's eyes hardened, carrying the weight of judgment, his silence screaming louder than rage. The storm outside had ended, but inside the house, the air was thick with smoke from bridges burned forever. Nothing would ever feel clean again. Ethan wandered the streets until dawn, the city still wet from the storm, his soul heavier with each step. He thought of Mark's smile, Sophia's laughter, Liam's quiet loyalty, and realized that nothing could bring back what had been lost. He whispered, "This is the death of more than friendship, it's the death of who I was with him." The rising sun cast pale light over him, but it felt hollow, unable to warm the wounds. His heart carried scars now, reminders of trust shattered and loyalty betrayed. Yet beneath the sorrow, a fragile strength began to stir, faint but real. Liam's words echoed in his mind, steady and relentless. Some endings are beginnings in disguise. Ethan exhaled, broken yet alive, and for the first time, he took a step not weighed by what was lost, but by what he could still become. The sun rose, but for Ethan it felt like a false dawn, light without warmth. He walked through quiet streets, each step heavier than the last. His heart replayed every moment with Mark. Laughter in childhood, secrets whispered under stars, promises carved into forever. Now, every memory felt poisoned, sweetness turned bitter by betrayal. Sophia's voice haunted him, soft and guilty, though she was not the architect of his ruin, only the spark caught in the fire. Liam's silence echoed too, a reminder that witnesses carry the truth, but truth could not heal this wound. Ethan whispered, "A brother lost is worse than an enemy gained," and the weight of it pressed against his chest. The world around him moved on, indifferent to the ruins of his soul. He realized he was not walking away from Mark, but from who he had been before this night. The boy who believed in loyalty was gone, and in his place stood a man marked by scars, invisible yet unhealing. Sophia stood in her room, staring into the mirror as dawn light crept across her face. Her reflection blurred through tears, guilt carving deeper lines than age ever could. She whispered, "I never wanted to break him," her voice trembling, but the silence offered no comfort. Mark's shadow lingered behind her, silent, unrepentant, his pride too heavy to let guilt breathe. Liam's words echoed in her ears, "Truth poisons as much as lies," and she realized she would forever be tied to the fracture of a bond she never meant to destroy. Ethan's absence burned heavier than his presence, and she wondered if forgiveness was ever possible. She pressed her hand to the mirror, imagining it was Ethan's hand, but only cold glass met her palm. The morning light revealed the weight of what was lost, a friendship buried in betrayal, and she knew nothing could bring it back. Mark sat alone, the silence deafening after the storm. He poured a glass of whiskey, his hand trembling though his face stayed stone. His mind replayed Ethan's words, "You're dead to me," each syllable carving deeper into his chest. He wanted to bury them under pride, but pride cracked, leaving guilt seeping through the fractures. Liam's voice haunted him, "You destroyed not one," echoing in the emptiness. He whispered, "He'll never forgive me," but even admitting it brought no relief. Sophia's sobs from another room clawed at him, but he refused to rise, trapped by the weight of his choices. The bond he destroyed had been his anchor, and now he was drifting, unmoored in a sea of silence. The whiskey burned his throat, but not enough to drown the truth. For the first time, Mark realized he was not victorious, only hollow. Liam walked away from the house, the weight of what he had witnessed pressing on him like a stone he could never set down. He had spoken truths, but truth did not prevent ruin. It only revealed it. He whispered, "I tried to warn you both, but no one had listened, and now the ashes of their friendship stained them all." His steps were slow, steady, carrying him into a dawn that felt empty. He thought of Ethan's hollow eyes, Sophia's broken voice, Mark's defiant silence, and he knew they would carry this scar forever. Liam was the witness, the observer, the one who had seen loyalty turn into envy, love into poison, laughter into silence. And though he had not been the cause, the wound marked him too. His voice drifted into the quiet, "This will follow us all," and the morning swallowed his words. Ethan stood at the edge of the city bridge, the river below swollen from the storm, its current restless like his heart. He whispered, "I lost more than a friend. I lost the version of myself that believed forever was real." His reflection in the dark water stared back, hollow and scarred. Sophia's laughter, Mark's promises, Liam's warnings, they all echoed, but none gave comfort. He turned from the water, the dawn breaking behind him, pale and cold. He whispered once more, quieter, sharper, unforgettable, "They didn't just betray me, they betrayed every version of us we could have been." The words cut through the air, final and unrelenting, a scar branded into the silence. Ethan walked away, leaving the bridge empty, but the echo of his last words remained, heavier than the storm, heavier than grief, heavier than love itself.